to a Coach Dave Academy lap guide. This week we're back in the GT4 Aston Martin, and we're at the Nurburgring combined layout for this week. This one, so it'll be a reasonably long one. But without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So there we are. That was the fast lap around the Nurburgring. I'm now in the replay of the same lap, and I'm just before the start-finish line, so I can talk you through all of the lines and corners and curbs and things of this track as efficiently as I can. So just starting here, coming across the start-finish line, we're looking towards the 150-meter board in the turn one. I'm braking just before the 150-meter board, quite hard, down to second gear, but make sure you downshift to second late. You want to get a little bit more of the curb than I did here, just so you can set up the second part, but I just about get away with it. Little brake here to help turn the car in, and then you just need to get on the throttle as hard as you can, so you really want to turn it tight so you get a straight exit, and then just floor the throttle to get a good exit. Then this one, I'm looking at the escape road here, braking just before the end of it. As you can see, just trail braking through, try and keep it nice and tight so you can get back to the left. And then basically, as you're in line with this curb on the right here, you start to brake again, more trail braking just into this corner. You want to hug the apex and then just aggressively feed the power on, as you can see, towards the exit. Use all the exit curb. And then looking towards the hairpin, I'm looking for this geoblock stuff on the left. I'm braking just about as the front of the car gets in line with it, about there. Use all of it to widen the corner. I deliberately miss a little bit of the first apex, just so you can get a greater exit, and then get as close to this curb as you can for the exit. Use all of this if you need to on the exit. It's all within track limits. The S's here, you need to use all of this curb on the right just to widen the corner. But even then, I don't think it's quite flat. I think you can, but for me, I was finding that it was getting a bit loose, so I was just doing a small lift through there. This one, I'm braking just as you can see this geoblock stuff ends here, basically in line with the end of that, just there. So significantly before the 100-meter board. It's just down one gear to fourth, and then you can use a little bit of the inside curb. Don't take too much because it tends to push you out wide. And then we try and get back across the left. Just as we're getting near to the left of the track, we start to brake again. This one just requires a little bit of a brake and then patience on the throttle so you don't run wide. Use all of this exit curb again just to carry more speed. And then on this version of the track, we've got the fast chicane. So looking at the 50-meter board, I'm braking approximately halfway between the 100 and the 50 boards. As you can see there, just 50% brake, 60%, something like that, down 2 gears to fourth. And then you can cut both of these apexes a reasonable amount as long as you keep your right wheel on the white line, I think is roughly the track limit. You can see here, I'm just on the white line through there, and that was legal. This bit, just as I'm coming off the curb, I start to brake already. Just moving the car across to the right-hand side a bit to open up the corner. And then you just want to hug the inside, and then on the exit, be careful because there's a bit of a crest, so you have to be slightly patient on the throttle until you're over that. Here, we're looking for the end of the wall. Just as we go past it, I turn a little bit to the right to widen the corner and brake simultaneously. As you can see there, I've just started to brake. Make sure you get it in nice and slow on this apex so you can power out, because you can use a bit of the exit curb, but if you do, it kind of pulls the car further out wide, and then it ends quite abruptly, as you can see the grass. So then you end up losing a bit of exit speed if you do that. This one in this car, I don't think it's quite flat. I think if you nailed it, it's just flat, but a small lift like I do here is fine. Helps to keep the rear in check as well. And it's just a bit safer to do it that way, but by all means try it flat. If you nail it, it does work. Just looking at the end of this graffiti, I think here, or a little bit earlier, braking just... you've got to be quite careful on the brakes here because you're turning quite hard, but we only go down 1 gear to fourth in this car. Just hold fourth through here. And then make sure you get right back over to the right-hand side as much as you can, because you want to miss this first curb. And then don't take too much of this right curb either, because the car, if you take too much, it lifts onto 2 wheels, and then it takes too long to get back down again for the next part. You can see I use it here, and then I end up using this second part, which is okay. That's just about as much curb as you can get away with taking. But in practice, I did take too much of this a few times, and then you end up losing time on the exit because you don't get as good of a run. Getting back across to the left-hand side as quick as we can, and then just as we get across to the left-hand side, actually just after this, you can't really see it at speed, but I'm really just looking towards the apex and braking down to fourth again. Use the curb on the inside, but not too much again, and don't use the curb on the left if you can avoid it, just to help you get the traction. Just had a small lift there, but got away with it. So I managed to carry the speed onto the straight. And up here, just after this crest, we have a small lift. As you can see, just a tiny brake as well, but I don't think that's 100% necessary. I think lifting would suffice. And then just flat on the power as soon as we pass the apex. to try and carry the speed onto the straight, because it's another one of the big straights of this track. The next part, it's a lift. I'm lifting just as I turn in, which is right here, and I'm doing a small brake again. I don't even realize while I'm driving that I'm doing this brake. It's a subconscious thing, so I think lifting would be sufficient. And then just balancing the throttle through the middle of the corner, and then as soon as we're straight, like running parallel to the direction of the track, I'm hard on the brakes again, which is just a chunk before this change in tarmac there. Going across to the left a little bit, but not overly focusing on it. The main thing is that you hug this apex, because then you can use the camber, and you don't want to get on this curb too early. You can use a little bit of the exit, but if you get too early in at too much of an angle, it just bounces the car out wide. And it's another one where you're carrying speed onto a reasonably big straight, so you need to get it right. Through here we got a compression, and then just after that we fade across to the right-hand side, and then just, you could use this sign as your reference. Just a little chunk before the sign, I'm starting to brake. Just down one gear to fifth, taking all of the curb on the inside. I give it just a little throttle through there, but then as soon as the car touches down again, I'm on the brakes again, and down another gear to fourth. And then again back on the throttle through here, and then as soon as we're roughly straight with the track, I'm braking again. Down to third for this part. Just balance the throttle until you get to the exit part, and then you can go hard again. Use all the curb if you need to, but again, as I said before, don't hit it too sharply, because the curbs are quite steep here, so if you hit them at the wrong angle, it really fires the car out wide. The next part is another one where I think you just need to lift, but I'm doing a little bit of a brake at the same time. Just see a bit of a brake input creeping in. Just a little lift as you turn in, and then back on the power as you pass the apex. Braking point for this one is the end of this geoblock stuff. You can see it ending on the right. Just down one gear to fourth. Make sure you hold it tight through here, because you can't cut over this curb very effectively in this car without losing time on the exit. But it has got enough traction to run flat through there. This part, we're just looking at this crest. As soon as we're over the crest, we're braking. As you can see, just as soon as the car settles after the crest, we're braking. Missed the first apex to try and get the second. I was a little bit off there. You can get a little bit closer, but don't hit it. Then you can use the exit curb. This chicane, as long as you move far off to the right and advance, it's flat through there. But then as soon as you get through, you're thinking about this next part. I'm braking before I'm even on the left side of the track here. And then the turn-in point is really the end of the geoblocky stuff over there. You can see I'm just moving away from the side of the track at that point. You want to hit the first apex, and then the second one's less, well, it's actually the first and second apex that you do want to hit. The third one's less important because it's not really on the racing line. I think I carried a little too much speed in here, but you can see I have to do a small lift just in the middle of the corner to make sure I didn't run wide. So you could do that slightly more optimally. But then the next part, can you see where it goes to darker tarmac? Just after that, I'm starting to brake. You need to brake quite hard, but then it's another one where you have to fade off and trail brake as you come through, turning to the right. Believe it or not, this corner was actually third gear in this car, because I just found if you went to second, it was right at the top of the revs anyway. I know this is first gear in a lot of cars, but in this car, third worked nicely. Then you get good traction through here, even though you're bouncing off the curb. You can maintain full throttle and carry the grip through. This one I'm looking just to brake before the end of the curb. As you can see, just from the driver's perspective, you're pretty much getting to the end of the curb and you're starting to brake. Just down one gear to fourth. You really don't want to get on this curb. I did here, and just about got away with it, but if you get any more, you end up in this grass and you end up really wide. It really compromises you. I had to do a little counter steer here, but I held the throttle and it survived. Just about got away with it. Then you get straight back across to the left-hand side, use the curb, but turn in early for this part. But then also you have to make sure you don't hit the inside curb. I think it's a really tricky corner, this one. If you hit the inside curb, it bounces you out wide, and if you get slightly offline, you really understeer. There's less grip out wide. I think because the camber of the road's at its maximum on the apex. And then just get on the power as hard as you can on the exit. Use the curb. And then this one, I actually think this is my most difficult corner on the track. Braking reference could be this Yokohama sign. You can see I'm starting to brake just here. So it's a decent chunk before that sign, but I'm really just looking at the corner apex, and I think that's why I find it so difficult. Because it's a really late apex, but if you get too wide, you end up, I think, again, the camber's more severe on the inside, so you lose time on the exit. But then if you hit the inside curb, you also bounce out wide. And this is the most important corner to carry the speed because you're running out under this uphill straight section. So you've got to really make sure you get that right, or at least get a good exit. Up here I was finding I was losing a little bit of time to the likes of the Porsche, where you can maintain 5th. In this car you have to go to 6th, so you lose a little bit of time there. But it's not too severe. This part we're looking at this geoblock stuff, we want to use all of it up to the wall. Just as we get onto it, a little bit of a brake and a lift, and then you turn in just so you miss the grass at the end of it. And then you get on the power as hard as you can. Again, I had a small lift in the middle of the corner just to make sure I didn't run wide, but I was right on the limit on the exit. This right hand is flat. You don't have to worry about it. Just be smooth and it'll be alright. And then here we're looking at the crest. I get the car to the right and then I point it left. And as soon as I'm pointing left, just before this crest is about here, I'm getting on the brakes. We go down to 3rd, hit the first apex, and then come back and fire out. And use this curb on the exit if you have to. It helps keep the car in on the exit because it's so angled against you. Again, for the carousel, I'm looking at the crest. There's a bit of a dip as you about there, and then there's a crest just before you dip into the carousel. I'm braking right in the dip, just a little bit down to 3rd. This car's really nice through the carousel. It doesn't bottom out at all, so it's quite easy to maintain through here. I'm just feathering the throttle as we come through, and then as we get towards the exit, just go full throttle and point it towards where you want to go, up to this curb, and it grips, and fire out onto the straight. This left kink is flat, and then this part, your turn in and braking point is pretty much the start of this curb. Just as you get into it, downshift 1 gear and a little bit of a brake, and then a bit of a lift for this right hand part. Use all of this curb on the exit because then it widens the next corner as well. And pretty much as soon as you get the car straight, back on the brakes, just a little bit. Be patient through here because you can, if you get slightly offline, you can run wide. There's quite a lot less grip out wide. Use this curb. To be honest, if you get 2 wheels on the grass here, you can kind of get away with it without an off track. But you do lose a bit of traction, but it's not too much of an issue if you do that. Through here I'm lifting just a little bit to hold it in tight, and then at this point as you're leaving the curb is when you start to brake. Just starting to brake there as I'm coming off the curb, basically pointing it towards the apex as I'm braking. This one I find in this car, it's quite important to get tight on the exit, so get across this bit of the curb, because then you don't have to cut as much of the next part, which is quite steep. So if you get any more than this, it fires the car out wide a bit more. So just take half a car on this curb. And it seems to work quite nicely. I'm full throttle again quite easily. Use all of this curb on the exit, and then just as we're fading off the curb, I'm starting to brake again, just down to 4th. I think it's 4th for most of the corners in this section. You've really got to be patient in this one because it's off camber over a crest as you come through. Quite easy to run wide, but you want to make sure you're getting back across towards the right hand side. Again, you could use this Yokohama sign as a reference if you want. It's just a decent chunk before you got to start braking. Just maintaining it in 4th. Try and hold it tight through here so you get back for the late apex. And then just as you've gone past this curb, just as you're straightening the car, you're starting to brake again. And this one you've got to turn in reasonably late, because if you turn in early, you end up touching the curb and that spits you out. And this is an easy one to get off track on the exit. So you can run about half the car over the curb. The curb's about in the middle of the car. This isn't an off track, but any further you're running the risk. And just maintain that line. And then you're braking just before the end of it. I'm just starting to brake here when there's probably another 1.5 length of curb left. Turning in so that we use all of it just as it ends on the left here. Make sure you don't hit this inside curb because then it becomes off camber on the exit and it really runs away from you. So it's another one you've got to be patient on the throttle. Just feathering it a bit through here and then use the curb. This one I'm braking just before the road slopes up again. Just starting there, just before the bottom of this dip. And then you have to turn in reasonably early because the car kind of overloads as you compress. Just 4th through here as well. You can carry quite a lot of speed. And you can take a little bit of grass on the exit, but don't overdo it because there is actually a slowdown there as well as an off track. From there we're flat through here, through this left as well. And then we got this dip. In this car I'm braking just a couple of car lengths before the dip, just starting to brake here. You still get airborne, but it's good enough to slow the car so you can get in for this apex. And you've got to make sure you get reasonably tight on the exit because it's a bit on the limit through this left part. Try not to hit this curb on the left, but if you do, you can just lift as you hit the curb and it doesn't unsettle the car too much. You will lose a little bit of speed, but that's a way to survive it. Through this whole section, it's flat. Just try and keep it tight between the curbs. You can actually use that curb on the left there. Put 2 wheels on the grass and it's okay. As we come out here, just before this fast right-hander, I'm looking at the edge of this the end of this geoblock bit. Just as we pass it, I'm then starting to brake. It's like car length or 2 after, and then I brake. Just a bit of a bit less than half brake pressure down to 5th. Make sure you get a tight exit, and then you've got to set up this part. And basically, as soon as you're pointing the car back towards the right a little bit, or straight with the road, back on the brakes down to 4th. Don't hit this curb, it's too steep and it just spits the car out, but you can use the exit curb a little bit on as you come out. And then just as you get off the curb, just after the end of the geoblocky bit, we count maybe a car length or 2, and then we're braking again. Down to 3rd for the mini carousel. And this one, you've got to actually exit quite tight. If you come out too early, the car gets a bit sketchy because it's a bit steep as you go over and the road curves away from you and the grass comes up really quick. Just make sure you get a reasonably tight exit. As you can see, as I come out of it, the car stops turning to the left. It goes right for a split second. But then as we come out, we're getting full throttle quite easily. Up to 5th just before this part, and then it's just a lift and a small brake. I hold 5th and then I'm back to full throttle again. And then just a small lift to get it in for this second part. I'm looking to try an apex at the start of this curb. So you're turning in to try and time it. There's your apex just on this curb. And then if you've nailed it, you should be able to just about hold full throttle and run out onto the straight. Another one where it's very important to get a good exit because the straight's so long. And this is probably your best overtaken opportunity, which comes right before the end of the lap, so it can make or break your race, how well you get out onto that straight. Through this section, the first part's flat, and then the start of this is flat. And just on the apex, you're starting to brake. I would maybe brake a tiny bit earlier here. Because I just about get it stopped. And you're trail braking all the way through because you've got you're first turning to the right as you start braking, and then you're turning to the left. So just be mindful as well. I'm lifting a bit on the brake here because of the bump. If you're too hard on the brake, the car goes straight. But just as I go through the dip, I'm lifting the brake a bit and then back on. And it's down to 3rd for this one. You want to use the inside curb just to open up the second part. And then you can get flat. And as long as you don't hit this second curve on the left here. I have a small lift, but it's just fine. If you set it up just a bit better, like if you take a tighter exit out of here, you can go flat through the final corner anyway. And then it's a short run to the line to bring you to the end of the lap. There we have it. That was the full lap guide for the Aston GT4 at the Nurburgring for week 8. I hope you found it useful. This is a particularly difficult track to learn, but it's one of the best when you know it. The key really is there's so many long straights that you really need to maximize the exits onto them. We're using quite low wing here as well for the same reason. The straights are just so important. So the key really is just to try and fire out on the straights as best you can. But yeah, that's it from me. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.